kind of things do girls argue about and find to argue about it here?
Trying to think. Stupid stuff. Not being quiet. Two girls are up late at night. The other girls want them to be quiet, so they start yelling back and forth. Somebody they know, somebody's boyfriend that the other girl knows, that's happened before. Or just stupid stuff out in the day room. They'll just start arguing about something, somebody's cards, stuff like that.
You said that Paradise pushes your buttons sometimes, and when you tell me, say she pushes our buttons by. But how did she do that? How does the kid get to you?
Probably by being the one in all the arguments. She's always involved in some sort of argument with the girls. There's been lots of girls in and out of here, and whenever there usually is a new girl, and she's usually the one to start an argument with it.
So she was pretty candid about a lot of her past. Now, in your job, obviously you got to keep the peace in here. But how does that impact you? Like, do you learn about their stories? Is that how do you see some of these girls, or how do you see Paradise sort of as an individual compared to the person who has to keep the peace? Does that ever get to you? Or talk about how that strikes you.
A lot of the girls that are in here are either in here for some sort of fighting with other girls, which has increased a lot, or they're here for running away from home. And they're always running away from something. It's never just like happy child running away from a happy home. There's always some sort of story behind there. And they do tell you their stories that are always very sad. It's always very depressing. And you, as a detention officer, you can't let that get to you. Because if you do, you'd be crying every day at work. So, I mean, you have to kind of have a heart and be their counselor, but on the other hand, you just have to kind of be able to not brush it off and not take it home with you, because otherwise you're gonna have to go home and just be miserable thinking about all the girls in here and why they're in here and their stories.
How do you turn that off?
I don't know. I just do.
Is there ever
talent.
an odd case where you're at home and you just find yourself thinking about it? Or?
I did casework for 2 years before I came here, so it's not that I've become immune to those feelings, but it's become easier dealing with, their stories and kind of just not ignoring it, but just not being able to take it home with you. It's become easier.
So, it seems like, you look at how many different people pass through here, and they all have similar stories. It's like, what would you say from your perspective, and even going back to when you were a caseworker, what's the root of all this? What do you think, if there was one area that you could address, if there was one wound you could find and bandage it, what would it be that would have the greatest effect on, teenage girls in general?
I really wish that there was a center to help out young girls who are runaways, because a lot of these girls, they're here for a reason, and whether that is fighting with other girls or running away from an unhappy home, there is a reason why they're in here, and it's not because they came from, you do get some girls who are in here that made a mistake, like setting off a fire alarm at school or something stupid like that, once in a while, but the majority of the cases here are sad cases, from either running away from home or rape, or we get a lot of rape cases in here, and we need something just as America to help these young girls out, because they're not getting it. Somewhere along the line we just forgot, and we go straight from them being in an unhappy home to them being in jail. There's no in between, there's no steps to help them not come back here, because these kids, they're either going to go back home and it's still going to happen, or they're going to just keep coming back in here and keep being in jail, and eventually they're going to go to adult prison.
Because runaway isn't the problem, it's the symptom.
Yeah.
So, what would you say the greatest challenges of working with juvenile girls in this setting?
Challenge. Probably not getting too close to them.
Actually say the greatest challenge is working.
The greatest challenge would probably be not getting too close to them, because some of the girls that come in here, they're funny, you know, you just want to be friends with them because they're so like spunky, you know, they have a personality, and you want to, you know, talk to them more. You want to kind of be, you know, their little buddy, but you can't. You just can't in this job, you know. And I'm one of the younger detention officers. I'm 26, and a lot of the girls, they look at me as more so they want to be friends than an adult, which they should see me at. So I have to be kind of strict with them because I need to let them know that I'm not, you know, one of their friends. And that's hard because, you know, I don't like to be mean, but sometimes you have to.
So what, it's, some could say it's almost a thankless job as far as the outside world goes. It's difficult. Faced with these stories, you have to fight off things getting too close. So what keeps you going? What gets you up in the morning? What binds you to this work?
Well, it's certainly not the money. I've always liked working with teens. I have, and that's what keeps me motivated because, I mean, these girls, they're here, and we're the only ones, I mean, they do talk to each other about things. We encourage them not to because that does start fights. But they do talk to the other girls, but we are the only ones that they talk to that they can get real advice from. And I mean, sometimes it's not the advice that they want to hear, but we're always pretty real with them. So, and they know that we're always here to talk to them. So,
we find, you know, Calamari's been doing this for 10 years, and one of the biggest problems is when kids become 18 and they age out of the system and a lot of the services, and it's almost like sink or swim. So what would you say to all the people that might see this, how people should perceive these kids once they're out and fighting to get their life back on track? What's the most important thing people need to know?
Wait, what's the question?
Well, people see these kids in black and white, right?
Yeah. And
so, you know, there's people who might have one of these kids apply for a job at their hardware store and see, oh, you've been in juvenile detention a lot, or I see you checked that you've been arrested before, and they tell their story. And it's really easy for people to look at these kids in black and white and judge them on the surface. But I think that, you know, personally, I feel like it's important to look beneath the surface and realize,
right.
You know, so I'm curious, like, these kids need the best shot they can to make it. So if you were addressing the many people that might encounter these kids and might be in that decision to give them a leg up or to just treat them like a petty criminal, what do you say to them?
Well, I think people need to work on their judgmentalness. I don't know if that's a word, but because a lot of these kids that are in here, I mean, they are just kids. I mean, and something that we also explain to them is that when you are in here, like whatever you've done to get in here, it's bad. Like, it's not cool being in jail, but this record is going to be erased. You know, once you get out of here, if you come back and you're 18, you're going to the big house. That's not a game. That's going to be on your record for the rest of your life. So whatever you did to get in here, don't do it again. I mean, it's an easy thing to say because a lot of these girls are in here for different reasons than the boys. But I mean, as far as the people who are hiring these kids, we've all done stupid things before. And a lot of these girls have just gotten caught. A lot of them are in here for just stupid stuff. And I mean, the majority of them are in here for, you know, runaways. But a lot of them are in here for stupid stuff, getting in fights, pulling fire alarms at school, being on probation for underage drinking, you know, stuff like that.
So any final thoughts, any personal perspective on all this that, you know, what's your... When you're like out for drinks and people learn what you do, and they just like are fascinated by it, like what's the first thing you tell them? What are you most likely to talk about?
I've never met anybody who's fascinated by what I do, but I mean, nobody really knows, and then you can't ever take the time to explain everything that we do here. I mean, nobody really knows. People think that basically sit and babysit these girls, but there's a lot more underneath the surface. I mean, we are responsible for these girls, like their safety, and that's number one on our list, which is why we have to do checks every 15 minutes, and we just have to constantly be watching, looking out for what they're doing, watching for fights, possible fights, keep girls away from each other who are bickering, just stuff like that. And nobody really knows. Nobody's here. The only people who know what we do is the other detention officers and my supervisor, Jamie. She comes back here quite a few times. So.
What would you consider the biggest challenges when you're out there in your car in dealing with juveniles? Tell us about juveniles.
Well, juveniles, you got to realize that juveniles are young adults that are becoming adults, and some of them are committing crimes that adult offenders are committing. And we're trying to salvage the juveniles by having a juvenile system, and we're trying to counsel them and try to coach them so they won't become career criminals. If that doesn't happen, then they will become career criminals.
So are most kids that come in, when you're out on the streets and you're apprehending them, are they usually cooperative? Tell me about kind of the psyche of the kids once they see you coming.
Well, usually the uniform speaks for itself. 70% of the juveniles do cooperate. They don't want additional charges. The ones that don't cooperate is the ones that don't want to go to jail, and that 30%, obviously, we have to struggle with them and take them to LCJC. They know the system. They know how to get away from the system, so they want to escape from justice.
One of the nights we filmed that you came in with two brothers, Kenneth Gant and Kentrell Pirtle, and they had been caught vandalizing, I think, like 20.
It was 40 vehicles we counted all together. We had several witnesses to come forward, and they've been doing this over a 3 months period. They would go to the Union Station, what we have in Gary on 5th, and they'll wait for the trains to go and where there's no one there. So it was a very well organized organization what they had. There was 3 to 4 of them. And of course they're involved with the vice lords. And why 2 of them ransacked the cars and broke in, 2 are in each street corner watching that the police won't come or any other person. What they failed to understand is their cameras at the station and caught them, doing these vandalism. All we had to do is put the face with the name. And that's what I went house to house to house in the area, because I knew it had to be somewhere close by. So we did a field investigation where we had to go from house to house, and finally I found the right house that was where they lived.
So I know you were saying in there, that kid had been living on the streets. How prevalent is that? I mean, you're dealing with kids who come from some, really bad backgrounds. Tell me about, the challenges that you think they also face and why they turn to a life of crime.
You gotta understand, some of these children live in poverty. They only come from one parenting. They don't have a father in the home. And the mother is overwhelmed a lot of times. Sometimes the mother succumbs to substance abuse. And these kids, that's all they see is poverty. Their parents are not helping out with the situation, and they need to make some money. They got necessities. And this is one of the reasons why they turn to the gangs, because the gangs offer them acceptance, family, love. It's kind of tangible, but it's kind of the fake love. But this is what they're looking for. They're looking for the attention. They're looking to be accepted and to be wanted. And that's not what they're having at home.
Anything you would want the public to know about, kind of the job you have, the kids you see, the work you do?
Well, I'd like to thank the community, because the community does help officers when they see a crime happen. A lot of times they're afraid, but they do call us anonymously and let us know what's going on. That's what happened on the instance with the 2 brothers. We had a brave witness that came forward, and he took a picture of them also with his own camera, and he helped us piece the puzzle together. People got to realize that we got to captivate these children and these juveniles at a young age and teach them what's right and wrong, because a lot of them have no cognitive ability. They're just learning from the streets. So we want to teach them from what's right and what's wrong. And hopefully we could salvage them, and so they could become better citizens. Because some of these people will become doctors, attorneys, if they further their education. And we want to make sure that our offsprings are going to be doing the right things in life.
Some of them can go down that path, and then some of them.
Yes, I've seen a lot of them that go down that path, that go down the right path, notice that they have done something wrong and they want to do something better for society, and some of them will become counselors. I've had a couple of juveniles that have become counselors and got out the gang and removed their tattoos, and they are good role models for other people. And there are those juveniles that do have some mental problems, and a lot of it stems, it's biological. And some of them are diagnosed with bipolarism at an early age, and they are the ones that are not going to be so productive for the society.